What's up, guys? It's your boy Nico. Today I just wanted to make a video going over the first round series of this year's postseason of the NBA, covering the series between the Boston Celtics and the Brooklyn Nets, and not only what just went wrong, but what can Brooklyn do going forward past this season to try to fix some of those problems that they have. So let's get right into it. So first thing I wanted to talk about was, I've been hearing a lot of things from whether it be my friends or NBA fans online alike, basically placing all the blame on Kyrie and KD for their inability to get past this Boston Celtics squad in the first round. And, I think there's a lot more that goes into that rather than just looking at it from the surface level or looking at it from the names that you see on paper when it comes to these two squads. And I just wanted to get into that a little bit. So, first thing I wanted to say was, when you look at these squads, it's clear to see that the Boston Celtics are a much more well-rounded and complete team than Brooklyn. And as much as a lot of these people like to make it out to seem as if, just looking at the names of the two biggest superstars on either team, whether that be, Kyrie and KD versus JB and Tatum, they a lot of times, would lean more towards the Nets. And I think when you look at it like that, you're making it more of a 2-on-2 game or a 1-on-1 game rather than 5-on-5, which is how it really should be and is. But, yeah, I think there's a lot more that goes into it than that, and I just think that, give the Boston Celtics credit where credit's due. Not only has Marcus Smart been made such an impact on this squad on the defensive end, obviously, winning Defensive Player of the Year this year, but I think a lot of it has to do with his development on the offensive end of the floor as well. With his ability to now effectively space the floor, really fulfill that 3-and-D role. He's always had that dog mentality and that reputation around the league as one of the most tenacious defenders. But I think his improvement on the offensive side of the floor has what's really been able to propel these guys into that next level of true contenders that we're finally seeing. The next thing that I wanted to talk about was the coaching. So with Steve Nash as head coach, I respect him, obviously, as a player, MVP, as a coach, great, really good coach, honestly. Just at the end of the day, I think it comes down to this, when I think he's more of a player's coach, and when it comes down to managing these two superstars' personalities and playing, I guess, more so around them to please them, that's cool, but it doesn't always work out when you play against such an X's and O's squad like Boston and Coach Udoka. What Boston has been able to do this season and this postseason, having really good ball movement, playing great team defense, getting smart shots up, just doing everything as a team, versus the Brooklyn Nets and Steve Nash, where it's kind of like they run everything through KD and Kyrie. That's just not a matchup that necessarily favors Brooklyn, as we clearly saw, because with that physical defense, it was like in this postseason, what we saw was KD or Kyrie bring the ball up and then immediately get shaded into traffic, and they try to either force the ball out of their hands or force them into the lane and with active hands get the strip, and then boom, fast break, easy points. So, yeah, I just think there's a lot more credit that needs to be given to this Boston Celtics squad. Not only has Marcus Smart obviously been able to do wonders on the defensive end for his whole career and now really be an effective offensive weapon, but, the improvement of Tatum and Jaylen Brown finally seeming to take that next step into NBA stardom and take over games like we've never seen before, I think also obviously, propelled them into that next category. But which is just interesting to me because I'm a Kyrie fan. I've been following Kyrie since 2013, so I was once a Boston Celtics fan for those couple years. And I remember there's a point where a lot of people, myself included, thought that there was going to become a point eventually where the organization was going to have to choose between Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown and split that up eventually if they wanted to do something seriously. But now it's just interesting for me. It's great for me to see, like as an NBA fan in general, just this duo work out together. And right now they're playing Miami, so clearly just a couple games away from the finals. So yeah, definitely something that has been interesting to see develop over time as well. Furthermore, I guess the next thing I wanted to get into was the rotations by Steve Nash. So a lot of times throughout this series, you saw that classic small ball lineup where a lot of times to close out quarters or close out games where they would run 3 of the 4 guards, whether it be Kyrie, Seth Curry, Dragic, or Patty Mills, and then KD at the 4 spot, and then one of the 5s, whether it be Claxton or Drummond. And there's obviously advantages to that when the shots are falling, but they clearly were not, and they were not able to take advantage of those mismatches on offense to get past a slower defender or get to open shots and find the open shooters. So when it's not falling like that and you're not able to efficiently score on the offensive end because of that strategy, a lot of times exactly like we saw this postseason, the defensive side of that is just not worth it. So a lot of times throughout this postseason, in this series in particular, you saw mismatches created from the 3-guard lineup that were super easy to be taken advantage of by Boston, which they did, where it's like you can either just get bullied down low because you have 3 guys who are 6'3" and under, or let's say you make the switch and then you bring the big man out, you draw the big man out of the paint, and then boom, all your guards are down low. So yeah, it was something that we saw kind of taken advantage of time and time again throughout this series, and I just thought it was interesting. Love Nash, but there's a certain point where you got to realize that what you're hoping for with this small ball lineup, running KD at the 4 and these 3 guards, is not what's happening, and the trade-off is just not worth it. It's not there. So yeah. Back to the Boston Celtics, though. One more thing that I forgot to mention was the improvement of Grant Williams as a shooter. I remember seeing him come out of Tennessee and thought, okay, cool, just another prototypical power forward that we're going to see throughout this next couple years in the NBA. But his ability to space the floor, and for whatever reason, they left him open in the corner countless times, just definitely put them over the top. When you have guys, obviously you want to make it as difficult as possible for either team's stars to score. But when you have guys that you're not necessarily worried about, who are dropping shots like it's nothing and hitting the open shots, hitting the shots that they need to, definitely just makes it a whole lot more difficult as a team and as an individual player to make the right play on defense. But back to the small ball lineup, I just realized I wanted to say a couple more things real quick about that. So a lot of times what we saw was, like I said, KD or Kyrie bring the ball up. They get the ball forced out of their hands because they're shaded into traffic, or they get forced into a super tough shot, right? So there was a few times where I saw, obviously, like I said, with the Grant Williams example, some other players, making it happen, hitting their shots, being able to force the team to come out and defend them. Obviously, Seth Curry did his thing every now and then. Bruce Brown was trying his hardest. But at the end of the day, especially when you're running a squad like that, a lineup like that, and you have 2 centers, whether it be Drummond or Claxton, who have absolutely no ability to hit any free throws, or when they're in the paint, you know what I mean? You're not worried about them causing foul trouble and then heading to the line to hit shots. It definitely just puts a lot more pressure on the stars to make things happen, and I think that's exactly what we saw here. Like I said, outside of Seth Curry and occasionally Bruce Brown, who overall I thought Bruce Brown was good. He just wasn't pulling the 3 ball whatsoever, which I know is not necessarily his role all the time, but he shoots it at a decent clip and just was not shooting it at all. And his lack of aggressiveness in terms of heading to the rack or trying to make things happen on his own outside of KD or Kyrie. There was some times where I saw him have an open midi or open floater if he took it, and just dribble that thing right back out and hand it right to one of the stars. But yeah, when you have a squad made up of guys like this who can go a little, the three guards, right, who can go a little streaky or maybe not make the right plays every time, and then the two bigs who cannot knock down anything outside of 5 feet. And then, like I said, Bruce Brown's lack of aggressiveness at certain points on the offensive end of the floor. It really did just leave everything up to KD and Kyrie, which unfortunately, they weren't able to make it happen. So you just got to live with that. But I do think going forward, if the roster, assuming that things stay the same how they are, because I know Brooklyn's not willing to give Kyrie the extension due to his absence, I guess, for half the year, if you want to say. And then KD, I know, hasn't talked to anybody from the Nets organization since they lost in the first round. So that's going to be interesting if it's the same, if they both, or if one of them just leaves, that'll be interesting. But if either of them really leave at all, that would definitely change everything up. But assuming that everything's the same and you're going into next year with the same big three with KD, Ben, and Kyrie, I think, this squad is definitely going to be something that's going to be, I think it's going to be interesting. Coming into this season, I know they were quote-unquote contenders with a completely different looking squad with James Harden, three ISO scorers, but that's no longer even in the realm of what they're looking like right now. But I think, let's say you go into next season with the same three guys, Ben, KD, and Kyrie. I think this is definitely going to be a real contender, not just to come out of the East, but to win it all. I think Ben, assuming he's healthy, assuming he's willing to play, and, I think regardless if you play him at the 1, bring Kyrie at the 2, KD at the 3 or 4, or if you want to put Ben at the 4, I think regardless, that'll make them a tough team to compete against. Having such a well-rounded defender at his size and Ben Simmons on your team, I think that will definitely push them over the top, because that was a lot of things that I saw that they were struggling with in this series against Boston, was the lack of size that they had, which Ben certainly solves some of that, and the mismatches that were created because of that lack of size, which, having a 6'10", 6'11" point guard who's an all-defensive player definitely not only puts that a little bit back in your favor, but also, makes them a much more difficult team to game plan against. Because how many guys do you know that can guard, beyond the three-point line, obviously, like inside the three-point line, obviously, can guard a 6'10" point guard like that with the physicality and the vision that he has, right? Especially surrounded by two prolific scorers in Kyrie and KD. So, yeah, I think going forward, assuming it's the same big three, the league is definitely going to have problems. But yeah, that pretty much wraps it up for today's video. I'll leave a link to all my socials and stuff. And, one last thing I just wanted to leave you guys with, to comment down below. In your guys' opinion, at this current moment in time, has Kevin Durant been surpassed by Jason Tatum? All right, that's it. Thank you, guys.